Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a truly fascinating historical and legal text from the Quran, Surah Al-Ma'idah. We're going to unpack a text that literally shaped Islamic jurisprudence, divine theology, and whole social frameworks. If you're into discovering how ancient rules and epic stories weave together to form a comprehensive way of life, you are absolutely going to love this.
So, think about this for a second. What actually connects a heavenly feast, the world's very first murder, and a universal code of justice? Sounds a bit like the plot of a heavy historical drama, right? But remarkably, these wildly diverse themes are all intricately tied together within this single chapter. We're going to see exactly how profound, mind-bending spiritual miracles perfectly balance out with the gritty, sometimes harsh, practical realities of human society. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the historical context, the miracle of the heavenly table, the first murder, halal and survival laws, criminal law, and finally, justice and pluralism. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. Historical context and naming.
What's really fascinating here is the name itself. Al-Maidah literally translates to a food-laden table, or a feast. Now, in most cases, chapters in this text are named after a broad overarching theme. But here, the title is anchored to a highly specific, miraculous event, a direct request made by the disciples of Jesus. We'll look closer at that in just a bit. To truly grasp the weight of this text, we have to look at the timeline. The early chapters focused heavily on foundational beliefs, while early Medina chapters dealt with, well, sheer survival. But Surah Al-Ma'idah arrived late, specifically in the post-Hudaybiyah era. At this point, the Muslim community wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. They were a sovereign, unvanquished state. Because of this newfound strength and stability, this text essentially operates as a comprehensive constitution. We're talking definitive criminal laws, international treaties, the whole shebang.
Section 2, the heavenly table.
And this brings us to a truly awe-inspiring historical moment. The disciples of Isa, or Jesus, asked him if God could send down a feast from heaven. Now, this wasn't out of disbelief. They wanted to witness a miracle that would bring their hearts absolute peace and to establish a day of festival. In response, Jesus put on simple wool and black garments, standing in humble prayer with tears in his eyes. And according to historical commentaries, a red table physically descended right through the clouds. It carried a boneless roasted fish, various vegetables, and 5 distinct breads, packed with olives, honey, eggs, cheese, and meat. It was an overwhelming sensory manifestation of the divine. This moment illustrates a profound theological shift. Just contrast the Maidah, this visually spectacular, fully prepared feast that descended as a final covenant, with the manna and solwa given to Moses' people. Those were raw, daily ingredients acting as a continuous test of trust. The heavenly table, on the other hand, wasn't just about satisfying physical hunger. It was a visible, undeniable seal of a divine treaty. In fact, it came with a massive condition. Anyone who disbelieved after witnessing this table would face unprecedented punishment.
Section 3, the first murder.
So at the dawn of humanity, a chilling sequence of events unfolded. Adam and Eve had twin sets of children. The divine law at the time stated you couldn't marry your own twin, but you could marry the twin from another birth. Qabil, or Cain, aggressively disputed this because his own twin was more beautiful. To settle the dispute, both brothers offered a sacrifice. Habil, a shepherd, offered his absolute best sheep. Qabil, a farmer, offered his worst crops. A divine fire consumed Habil's offering, accepting it, and left Qabil's untouched. Consumed by toxic jealousy and ego, Qabil murdered his brother. He didn't even know what to do with the body until God sent a crow to scratch the earth and bury another crow, exposing Qabil's ultimate shame.
But before the murder even happened, Habil made this incredibly powerful declaration. He said, "If you raise your hand to kill me, I will not raise mine to kill you. Indeed, I fear Allah." What's crazy is that Habil was actually physically stronger, yet he showed profound, absolute restraint. He chose complete nonviolence in the face of his brother's rage, acting as the ultimate historical model for righteousness and self-control.
Section 4. Halal, Haram, and Survival. Because human nature is what it is, humanity needs boundaries. So, this text establishes definitive dietary codes. Things like dead animals, blood, and swine are strictly prohibited. But what's particularly fascinating is the ban on meat divided by gambling arrows, known as Islam. See, pre-Islamic pagan Arabs used to slaughter a camel and use lottery arrows to distribute the meat, which heavily exploited the poor. By banning this practice, the text didn't just regulate food, it actively dismantled a completely unjust and exploitative economic system. So, what happens when strict religious laws collide with the gritty reality of human survival? Well, Islamic jurisprudence introduces the conditions of necessity. If someone is facing real, life-threatening starvation with no halal alternative, the forbidden food actually becomes permissible. But there's a catch with the application here. You can't have a sinful intent, and generally you can only eat the absolute minimum needed to survive. It beautifully highlights that protecting a human life will always override standard dietary prohibitions.
Section 5. Criminal Law. Now, this text does introduce severe punishments like amputation for theft, but the application is governed by incredibly strict criteria. First, the stolen item must reach a high minimum value called nisab. Second, it must be broken out of a highly secure location. Simply taking something left out in the open doesn't qualify for this specific punishment. Crucially, it cannot happen during a famine. In fact, Caliph Umar famously suspended this law entirely during a time of extreme hunger. And finally, the proof must be 100% absolute. So it's a severe deterrent for sure, but it is surrounded by immense judicial friction.
The text also tackles the highest form of state treason and armed terrorism, known as hiraba. The source material explains this through the shocking historical account of the Uraina tribe. This group came to Medina sick and dying. The state gave them free medical care, shelter, and restorative food. But once they healed, they totally betrayed the state. They brutally blinded and murdered innocent shepherds, stole state property, and launched an armed rebellion. The strict, severe penalties outlined in this surah were laid down specifically in response to this kind of terrorism, serving to protect the newly formed sovereign state from utter anarchy.
Section 6. Justice and Pluralism. To see exactly how deeply this sense of justice runs, consider the story of a companion named Nu'man bin Bashir. He was given a special piece of land by his father, and his mother insisted the Prophet Muhammad serve as a witness to this gift. But when the Prophet asked the father if he had given an equal share to all his children, and the father said no, the Prophet sternly refused. He told him to fear God and treat his children equally, stating flat out that he would never be a witness to an injustice. Absolute fairness is demanded everywhere, starting right inside the family home.
And this absolute fairness scales all the way up to international and interfaith relations. Ayah 48 delivers a truly profound message. Had Allah willed, He would have made you one nation, but He intended to test you in what He has given you, so race to all that is good. This is an astonishing endorsement of religious pluralism. It explicitly states that human diversity and differing laws are a deliberate, divine test. The goal here isn't forced uniformity. It's a healthy, peaceful competition in doing good within a diverse society. Which leaves us with this final, unforgettable mandate from Ayah 32, which is actually a direct response to the tragedy of that first murder. Whoever saves one life, it is as if he has saved all of humanity. Just think about how that reframes everything we've looked at today. From divine feast to strict state laws, the entire structure exists to protect and elevate the sanctity of a single human life. If saving just one person equates to saving the entire world, I have to ask you, whose world will you save today? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning, keep learning.